Mike demonstrated how easy it is to get started with APM using automated analytics in the space of predictive analytics. Automated analytics is very strong, has a lot of value to bring because it's so easy to implement. Basically, you don't have to do anything, just provide the system with data. And the system will regulate itself basically and give you notifications. But in certain cases, it's important to push a predictive model on certain assets, making sure that it uses specific variables, specific tags, and looks for a relationship between these multiple tags, these n dimensions, and looks for a correlation. So for that, Aviva developed guided analytics to have a simple, more developed step into the world of predictive analytics. And let me demonstrate that to you in the next few minutes. So guided analytics uses the newsfeed as well as automated analytics to alert you of anomalies. And you see that by that icon with the A in the newsfeed and the two arrows pointing in a different direction. The other icon is what Mike already demonstrated, is automated analytics. Now on this homepage we see a lot in the newsfeed. And well, let's just select one of the news items from guided analytics. In this case, we'll click on the asset Clearwell, and we will be redirected to the Clearwell asset page. Now, we see a lot of information on this page about that asset, but what we're interested in is guided analytics in particular. And so let's scroll through the different news items that guided analytics generated. But it's quite a bit. It's over 500 news items. So I can click on the asset news page, and then it opens up in a list form, and then I can filter down the information that I really want to analyze further. So in this case, okay, let's go for the last 7 days, and then Insight will present me the last 7 days with guided analytics news items. So let's find an interesting case. So let's move to this news item, for instance, where we have 3 variables that correspond to an anomaly score of 100%. And that means that this is a very rare abnormal situation, meaning that this will probably be a problem. So if I click on that, I move to a trend where I can see the 3 variables in the last 6 hours before the anomaly was detected, and then 2 hours beyond that. And below I see the anomaly score. And by actually seeing that the anomaly score is 100% and verifying the evolution of these 3 variables over time, I realize that this is indeed a problem that needs to be analyzed further, and I can drill down on a specific tag and analyze it in depth and look at what guided analytics is providing me with more information. So we'll not go into all the details during this webinar, but this gives you a good indication of what guided analytics can do. Now, how do we get there? Because it's very important to receive the information from guided analytics, but you need to configure something. And luckily, Aviva made sure that it is simple to configure guided analytics. So let's go to Clearwell again, that same asset, and let's build up a model and train that model based upon historical data that already exists in Insight. So in this case, we're on the asset information page. We click on Asset Actions, move to Add Guided Analytics Model, and then we are presented with a similar screen as what Mike presented earlier. So I can search for a couple of tags. So for instance, I'll look for a temperature around that asset. I'll add this to the list. I'll look for pH, for instance, for the acidity. And this gives you an indication that it's difficult to find as a human being a correlation between these type of variables. And let's go beyond that. Let's add a pressure. With these 3 variables, and in order for the model to work properly, we need at least 3 to 5 variables. We can go beyond that. We can give the model a name, and then we can start configuring the period of historical data that we want to use to train the model. So we can select 1 week, for instance, the last week, because we need at least 1 week of data, or we can customize that period. Then we can set a filter. That filter, in this case, what I want to do is, for instance, use the speed of the pump to actually say, yeah, if it's lower than 10 RPM, then I don't need to use the data at that given time, so that the training of the model will discard all that information when RPM is lower than 10 RPM. And then, of course, it will discard it as well in real time, of course. We also have an operational mode indicator that is quite useful when using batches, for instance, because then you can link a tag of batch information and give an indication about, for instance, the type of products that we're producing, and that guided analytics will make use of that information. So we see that in a couple of clicks we can train this guided analytics model. After 30 minutes, about an hour or so, the model is trained, and then you're up and running and set to, well, look for anomalies, basically, using guided analytics. The goal of using these analytics features, like automated analytics, guided analytics, or either a step further, advanced analytics, is to detect anomalies before they actually lead to downtime. But Aviva thought a step further and provides a solution to actually do something about the anomalies and make sure that they don't lead to downtime. So let's move into the next step. And for that, Aviva developed the asset library. The asset type library consists of many different asset types and their different failure modes that Aviva built over a course of 20 odd years of consultancy around maintenance. And so we can make use of that information and actually prescribe actions to alleviate a certain problem and make sure that it doesn't lead to that horrendous downtime. So what does that mean? Let's move into a real demo again. So here I'm heading to Insight, but the Insight administration pane. And I click on the asset type library. And in this simple page, I have an overview of all the different asset types that are available to me through Insight, and I can select them and actually publish them into my Insight environment so that I can use these asset types and link them to my different assets. And I can find motors, pumps, heat exchangers, blowers, fans, you name it. So there are quite a bit of asset types available. And now let's move into the actual Aviva Insight environment so I can showcase you what it actually does. So here I have the example of compressor 1, which is an asset. I know it particularly well. The asset type is, of course, a compressor, and the compressor needs to run, of course, needs to turn, and what is acting upon that, that is an AC motor. So when clicking on asset info, it opens on your right hand side the asset information page, and there I can select the different asset types that are available to me through the asset type library. Now, of course, now we need to do something. Let's take the example of creating a condition-based rule, as Mike did earlier, but now by adding the prescriptive actions of what to do in case of a certain event, let's say, or a certain alert. So in this case, we have the same page that we saw before for creating a condition-based rule, and let's name that alert, let's say, hot loop, because my lubrication system is getting hot. I do realize that there is an impact when my oil is running hot from my compressor. It has an impact on the remaining of the system and mainly the bearings. So let's look into the direction of the bearing temperatures. from not only the compressor, but also the motor, of course. And so let's select these different tags and add them to the condition-based rules. Okay, I selected them. I add them to the list. I will not go into further details about setting these thresholds because Mike already explained that very well earlier. And then we see below that list the possibility to unselect the prescriptive actions. And this is where it gets interesting. Here I can select the either motor or compressor asset types. And then there's different subcomponents of these asset types. So in this case, I do realize that when I have my bearing temperatures for my compressor that are too high, I have an impact on my potential temperature control valve. So I need to analyze that failure mode, and I add that to the list. And also my oil cooler, for instance. I also add that failure mode to the list so that these prescriptive actions can be reorganized in the proper order for my maintenance technicians to know what to do and when to do it. Now, in this case, I do realize that I also need to check the sensors, the temperature sensors. So I add them as a custom prescriptive action. So not only users can make use of the prescriptive actions from the library, they can also add their own prescriptive actions. Fantastic. Now let's drill a bit deeper into this potential situation. We can, for instance, analyze the bearings as well. So after doing the first steps of analyzing my systems, I want to do a more advanced analysis of my bearings by doing a vibration analysis. So I add that to the list of prescriptive actions, and that is a pretty good list of work to do when my technicians, my maintenance technicians, receive a notification by either email or by the action that I link to my maintenance software, my CMMS or EAM. And the rest of the system is basically the same approach as Mike explained earlier. So in a couple of clicks, we can make use of predefined prescriptive actions, helping maintenance experts roll out these maintenance strategies, prescriptive maintenance strategies, rapidly and easily.